Good morning, all. Happy weekend. Hope you all have something planned up or, having a relaxing one with your loved ones, friends, and who not. Today, I would like to take this opportunity to mention in this video not just about today's game against Hawthorn. I've already done a preview for that. But I would like to take this moment to talk about some of the things said about the captain, Jack Steele, lately. And look, everybody's entitled to their opinion, absolutely. One view doesn't mean you're wrong, the other view doesn't mean you're right, it's just an opinion. But one thing that I would like to talk in this video is not to defend Jack Steele or anything, or by any stretch of means, but to talk about his journey since coming to the Saints. Jack Steele was one of the GWS players from the Greater Western Sydney Giants Football Club to cross over to a Victorian club in St Kilda. He, along with other players like Taylor Adams, Adam Treloar, Will Hoskin-Elliott, made the move, I think, for more opportunities. And, when you come to Victoria, the opportunities are a lot because majority of the clubs in AFL are from Victoria. If you put this on a pie chart, you'd sort of think, okay, 60 to 70% are from Victoria. Now, with Jack Steele, he crossed over in the start of 2017, coached by Alan Richardson. A very introvert type of player, but a very hard-working player as well. Puts his body on the line, gives it his all. And one thing with Jack Steele I've noticed, he reminds me a little bit of Nick Riewoldt, not from a player performance point of view. Obviously, there were two different players. Nick Riewoldt, was a half-forward player, a tall half-forward. Jack Steele was hired to be like an inside grunt midfielder. Jack Steele, when I say he's been a bit like Nick Riewoldt in terms of having to carry a lot of the weight of the midfield on his shoulder. I remember Nick Riewoldt, pretty much since he became a very good tall forward for the Saints, pretty much had to carry the whole club on his shoulder, literally, through their good, through their tough, through their average times and whatnot. Jack Steele pretty much did a similar thing with the midfield. Works his absolute backside off, been an absolute grunt player to the inside midfield, and has always kept the midfield battle as much as they could in the game. And that's something to be commended with him, okay? Remember, this was a player who was looking for more opportunities, and I think St Kilda Football Clubs found him to be a very good fit. I remember at the time, the senior midfielders David Armitage and Jack Steele, known as Stuv, were the two best midfielders of the Saints at the time, and who provide the best supply to the forwards. Jack Steele's role was to add to that and provide good, ample support to Armitage and Jack Steele, and the other midfielders, Seb Ross, Jack Nunes at the time, back in Alan Richardson days. Now, as the years have gone by, Jack Steele elevated his game to the next level. He not only became a captain by example, like performance example, he also won, I think, a couple of best and fairest and was an All-Australian player. He made it to the All-Australian team fair and square. Not by fluke, but fair and square. Because every game, especially in that COVID times, 2020, 2021, even 2022, when things, lockdown started lifting, this bloke, we're talking about a bloke who not only, went next level, every game, whether it was a St Kilda win, a St Kilda honourable loss, a St Kilda humiliating loss, he was always up there with disposals in terms of stats and possessions of the ball. He was up there, number one, pretty much. And it was a Jack Steele-driven midfield at the time. So you could pretty much, argue how one-dimensional the midfield was because he was their go-to. That's the sort of player Jack Steele he was and the leader he was by example. Again, he is, not a very talkative guy. That's okay. Every leader's different. But his performance was such that he went next level and commanded respect from the club and demanded, high standards. Now, as far as that was concerned, that's where Jack Steele was. Come 2023 and 2024 onwards, that's when Ross Lyon took over as coach because Brett Brunton, the previous coach, got axed by the end of 2022. Ross Lyon has his own expectations as a coach. As do every coach. He has his own standards, demands, and whatnot, and he impresses that on the players. Very transparent coach, no doubt. He's not going to, he's not going to just cover up and camouflage. If he has to give a clip between the eyes, he'll just do it. There were some expectations about Jack Steele and how, what he can do to be a good running midfield. He's a good grunt midfielder, but how to be a running team. I don't blame the change in this because Ross Lyon made it clear. St Kilda, I want this club to be a good running team on the outside and inside. And he wanted Jack Steele to add value to that as well. He saw potential in Jack Steele. Okay? He did that. So that was one really amazing thing. He added value to that. He asked him to do certain things with his fitness routine in such a way he can add to that running team. Okay? And as a result, I know since that people have been saying, oh, there's been a slight change in form. He's performing not every week, but every few weeks here and there. But one thing, I understand all those views, but we're talking about a player who has, carried the mantle of that midfield for quite some time. Okay? And it's now got to a stage at St Kilda that the next lot of youth players take the lead. Okay, Jack Steele's one of the senior players there to give support, guide the youngsters, and good on him. Good on the guys like him, Wilkie, Webster, Sinclair, Mason Wood, Brad Hill, those type of senior players. But it's over to the next lot of players to take the lead. Okay, with the guidance of these senior players. So people are entitled to their opinions that there's been some times with this form. But look, remember one thing: form is temporary, class is permanent. Every player goes through a dip in form. Okay, it's not that it's a Jack Steele thing. Every player goes through a dip in form. I'll never forget with Dane Zorko. I think when Brisbane were losing to Collingwood, Chris Fagan sprayed him. He had probably one of his worst games. I think when Brisbane lost to Collingwood in an upset at the Gabba earlier this year. Fags gave him a spray. I remember that. They showed it live on TV. So it can happen to the best, and it's okay. Because at the end of the day, they are humans. They're entitled to have down games too. Of course, it shouldn't be a regular thing, but it happens. It's like us in our jobs. We go through tough days, challenging days, right? It's okay. Just because we're so good in what we do, a skill, doesn't mean every day is going to be smooth sailing. It's boring, right? You want to have some, interesting days too, challenges and stuff. Because not only you get to learn how to handle the challenge, you become better for it. And as the saying goes, you only know more about yourself in your profession or personally when you go through challenging moments. If it's smooth sailing, you're cruising through. So what? It's happy days, you just keep going. But what else is there to it, So that's what it is with Jack Steele. And if this sort of thing can be said about Jack Steele, okay, similar questions can be asked about other gun midfielders in the comp too. One midfielder who comes to mind who's very good for the club is Patrick Cripps. All these questions that you ask about Steele, you can ask a similar question about Patrick Cripps. Why? Not only he's their best, midfielder by a mile, he's a Brownlow medalist. Jack Steele is an All-Australian and a best and fairest for the Saints. Patrick Cripps is a Brownlow medalist. A Brownlow medalist is the best player in the comp and a fair player in the comp by far all year. Patrick Cripps has achieved that. And last few weeks, for those who have been following football closely, we know what Carlton have been going through. Understandable, the pressure on their committee, board, the coaches, and especially Michael Voss. Patrick Cripps talks about how they love playing for Michael Voss. But if you look at Patrick Cripps, where has the leadership been from him and the other players the last couple of weeks in particular? There's no cohesion. It's lacking. And he's probably not been in his best form either. You always talk about when any team wins in AFL, it probably starts with the best players stepping up. Patrick Cripps is far and by their best. Every time you play Carlton, you always talk about, you got to stop Cripps, you got to stop Walsh, Adam Chera, got to stop Curnow. Absolutely, they're their best players. But they've not been hitting form. There's no cohesion. They're not leading from the front either. So, my thing is, I'm not trying to say that, I'm not here to pinpoint about players, but at the end of the day, if you can question about Steele's recent form, similar questions can be asked about other players too. Especially people with amazing credentials, like a Brownlow medalist, Patrick Cripps. And Cripps is a very good player. He's an amazing player. He can be a match winner, but it's not been there the last few weeks. So same questions can be asked. But then at the end of the day, it's not just about the form, it's how well they can bounce back from it. Good players bounce back. You talk about Scott Pendlebury from Collingwood. He's been there. He's been an amazing servant for the Pies. Great two-time premiership player, great leader. but I don't think he's like dominating every game this year himself. He's just there to support the young, the next crop of players and stuff, and he's there, but he's doing what he has to do. So, but because Collingwood are winning, no one talks about that. And because St Kilda are doing a rebuild, it's why we talk about the senior players. And look, that's okay. Everyone's entitled to their views, but at the end of the day, this can happen to the best of players. Okay, and me personally, being a follower of AFL myself, I never react when good players slump in form. To be very honest, I know it's part and parcel. They're going to have these types of games, but it's all about what they do from now on. What they do from that moment onwards. And my take is good players always find a way to bounce back. And since Jack Steele was in particular, questioned about his form and stuff, he has responded in some of the games moving forward where he was responsible in the, team showing up. So, drop in form can happen due to a lot of things. It's not just a performance thing. It's not a competency or a skill-based thing. Could be due to psychological factors. Could be due to other things going on. Could be a lot of things driving this, okay? From the outset, it looks easy to pinpoint the players, but there are so many other things that could be driving it. But at the end of the day, we all love to see them hit their form because they command respect, and Steele was something like Cripps in the sense that every time he was always doing well, they always think, if you want to stop St Kilda's midfield, it's all about stopping guys like Steele, stopping guys like Winhager, all those type of players. So Steele was always one player who opposition players try to turn their focus to. That's the sort of player he was. Lately, because of form, it's otherwise in thoughts. But at the end of the day, as long as the players bounce back, that's the main thing. So that's the purpose of this video. Is to not just compare players, but just to show that similar questions can be asked about other players who have dropped in form. I mean, Bontempelli didn't have a great game against the Saints. He didn't have probably his lowest 14 disposals, but it didn't matter because the Bulldogs won. And it wasn't spoken, his low game, because Bulldogs won. If Bulldogs were in a similar form and kept losing, I'd be interested to see how many people were going to be silent about it, to be very honest. But because they're winning, it's not being spoken about, that's all. So it does happen to the best of players is the point. Alright, I'll probably wrap it up there. That was pretty much what I wanted to say. Hope you have a lovely football weekend and a lovely time with your family, loved ones and friends. Take care, and I think, as I mentioned on my Thursday video, my next video will be about the review of tonight's game, St Kilda versus Hawthorn at Marvel. Till then, take care, have a great weekend, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.